Tonight, we're traveling back to a decade where almost everything seemed to exist in exaggerated proportions. The hairstyles were bigger. Shoulder pads were aggressively padded. Family problems were equally magnified, creating an atmosphere of controlled chaos that somehow worked itself out by the time the evening news came on. Welcome to the 1980s, a peculiar era of microwave dinners that somehow never quite tasted like actual food. Beige station wagons that seemed to multiply in every suburban driveway, and the constant, ever-present anxiety that somebody somewhere might accidentally record over your favorite episode of MacGyver on the VCR. Before we really settle into this journey through time, I'd like to ask you for something simple. If you've been enjoying this particular blend of soothing historical commentary mixed with gentle psychological excavation of the American family unit, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. But only if you genuinely find this content enjoyable and worth your time. There's absolutely no need to pretend if this isn't your style of storytelling. And if you're feeling particularly bold tonight, I'd absolutely love to hear from you in the comment section below. Tell me where you're currently listening from and what the current time happens to be where you are right now. It's always 2 a.m. somewhere in the world, and there's something oddly comforting about a stranger gently roasting the American nuclear family at precisely the moment when you really should be sleeping instead. Now, I want you to get genuinely comfortable because this is going to require some time. Dim those lights down low. Turn on a fan if you happen to have one nearby. Something with that kind of white noise that makes the world feel somehow less lonely and more manageable. Maybe grab a blanket if you need one, preferably something that was crocheted by an elderly aunt who never quite warmed to you as a person, but made it anyway out of some sense of obligation or duty. You're going to need that comfort because we're about to step into a world where virtually everything is a potential hazard. The wallpaper is literally made of lead paint. Your father's mustache is thicker than most people's entire personalities combined. The only form of mental health treatment that seems available is silently mowing the lawn in pristine white sneakers while thinking about your feelings privately. But before we dive deeper into these memories, let's pause and ask some questions that genuinely deserve answers. What did it actually feel like to consume 6 consecutive casseroles, each one made primarily from condensed soup and not much else? Why did every single living room contain a decorative glass bowl that nobody was ever permitted to touch under any circumstances? Did fathers really communicate almost exclusively through grunts and sighs, or was that unique to certain families? Was there ever actually a child who survived riding in the back seat of a wood-paneled station wagon without getting a full dose of secondhand smoke and existential dread? How much psychological repression can actually fit inside one pair of polyester pants with pleated fronts? And here's the real mystery that nobody talks about. If these houses were kept so aggressively clean, why did they always smell like microwaved fish sticks mixed with regret? Congratulations! You've just been transported to a typical suburban American home in 1984. Ronald Reagan's administration is currently playing on the television in the background. Your older sibling just erased your high score on Pac-Man out of pure spite and malice. And your mother is staring directly at you over a pyramid of Tupperware containers with the cold, calculating intensity of someone who survived the Great Depression and never quite forgot what deprivation felt like. The morning begins with your eyelids slowly fluttering open to the sound of your clock radio, which is currently blasting Eye of the Tiger at a volume designed to wake even the deepest sleepers. The air in your room carries a distinct combination of scents. There's burnt toast drifting up from somewhere downstairs, mixing with the overwhelming chemical smell of aerosol hairspray that someone sprayed far too liberally in the bathroom. Breakfast, when you finally make it to the kitchen, becomes a genuine gamble about what you're actually going to eat. Will there be a box of Lucky Charms waiting for you, complete with actual marshmallows? Or did your mother, in her infinite cost-cutting wisdom, empty it and refill it with generic brand cereal flakes that taste like cardboard mixed with disappointment? Every single spoonful you eat becomes a reminder that nutrition in the 1980s wasn't actually a rule. It was more of a suggestion that most families politely ignored. You lie there in bed for a moment, staring up at the textured ceiling above you, just listening to the sounds of the house waking up. You can hear the faint, distant sound of a neighbor's lawnmower already running before sunrise. The house is slowly coming alive around you. Pipes are rattling throughout the walls. Someone's hairdryer is roaring in another bathroom. There's that gentle but persistent background hiss coming from the radiating baseboard heater. You can distinctly hear your mother in the kitchen, currently engaged in what seems to be her daily battle with the world's angriest toaster. You finally force yourself out of bed, your bare feet finding the cold patchwork of shag carpet, and you shuffle down the hallway, stepping carefully around scattered socks, a Rubik's Cube that's been abandoned in frustration, and that vague feeling of existential dread that seems to linger in the wallpaper like a smell you can't wash out. The bathroom smells so intensely of Aqua Net that you genuinely can't tell whether you're supposed to brush your teeth or just shellac them and call it a day. Downstairs, the kitchen has transformed into a shrine to questionable 1980s interior design choices and the kind of industrial strength optimism that only comes from not knowing any better. There's a fruit bowl sitting on the counter that contains exclusively bananas in various stages of total crisis. Some are still yellow. Some have begun their transformation toward brown. Some appear to have developed their own ecosystem. A ceramic canister set decorates the counter, with each one labeled with appropriate words like flour or coffee. But when you actually open them, they contain only sugar packets, rubber bands, and, inexplicably, a tape measure. A microwave the size of a college dorm refrigerator hums ominously in the corner, always ready to transform last night's leftover pizza into something that resembles a science experiment more than actual food. You approach the breakfast table and are immediately greeted by what the family has taken to calling the great cereal debate. The options available to you are limited and uninspiring. There's a box of Lucky Charms with exactly one lonely marshmallow rolling around the bottom. There's a box of Raisin Bran that expired during the Carter administration. And there's something called Toasty Oat Circles, which is the store brand and whose mascot looks vaguely threatening in a way you can't quite articulate. You pour yourself a bowl, and the cereal makes a loud clinking sound like gravel being poured into a bowl. You add a splash of milk that seems to be flirting dangerously with its own expiration date. Every single bite becomes a textural adventure, a weird mixture of sweet, stale, and possibly medicinal. There's approximately a 50% chance that when you bite into what you think is a raisin, it's either an actual fossil or just a cleverly disguised piece of lint from the dryer. You glance up at the other people sitting at the breakfast table. Your father is completely hidden behind the morning newspaper and a mug of coffee so strong it's probably considered a controlled substance by the DEA. Your sibling is already wearing a windbreaker indoors, which seems both excessive and somehow perfectly normal for the 1980s. They're methodically picking marshmallows out of their bowl with the precision of someone cracking a safe. Your mother is somehow multitasking between pouring orange juice from concentrate, yelling up the stairs about missing shoes, and maintaining complete control of the household chaos. The television in the corner is chattering away about interest rates, acid rain, and something called the space shuttle. You're supposedly eating a balanced meal right now, but the closest thing to actual fruit is the artificial flavor somehow baked into the cereal, plus a cherry-shaped Flintstones vitamin you find inexplicably sitting next to your fork. And then there's the ongoing Tupperware wars. At least one plastic container is always missing its matching lid, and nobody in the entire house can locate the correct bottom for the top that they do have. Your attempts to close your lunchbox with a warped container are met with the resigned sigh of generations who came before you. Outside, the neighborhood is slowly coming alive in fits and starts. Garage doors are groaning open with a mechanical sound that echoes through the morning. Kids are gathering in clouds of car exhaust, waiting for the school bus. You can hear the distant sound of a neighbor cursing under their breath at their car's carburetor. Every morning in suburbia is actually a minor miracle of scheduling, negotiation, and pure survival on nothing but processed grains and whatever willpower you can muster. You finally finish your cereal, scrape the bowl clean, and head out the door, already running late, your shoes untied, your hair only half brushed. Just another morning in the 1980s, powered by the sacred ritual of the cereal lottery. A game you'll never actually win, but one you'll definitely remember forever. You pad across the shag carpet into a bathroom that looks like someone exploded a lime in there. There's a carpeted toilet lid, because apparently that seemed like a good design choice in 1982. The only thing stronger than the cleaning chemicals in here is your fear of accidentally stepping on a rogue Lego, which apparently migrates into the bathroom at night for reasons nobody understands. You genuinely wonder how anyone survived in this room, considering the mold ecosystem that's almost certainly thriving behind the peeling wallpaper. The door closes behind you with that hollow thud that echoes like a ghost's footstep in a chamber that smells like a combination of pine scent, mildew, and something suspiciously floral that might have once been pleasant but definitely isn't anymore. The walls are clad in wallpaper that seems to defy the basic laws of geometry. You see swirls of orange and olive green, the colors now peeling away in loose, curling sheets that look exactly like sunburned skin. Each patch of discoloration marks another battle lost in the endless suburban war against humidity. It's a silent testimony to the complete futility of steam-resistant glue. You flick on the light, and a single bare bulb surrounded by a globe fixture casts the kind of greenish pallor that you'd normally expect to see in a hospital waiting room or a crime scene. The mirror is trimmed in fake brass and flecked with mysterious spots that you really don't want to think about too hard. When you look in it, You see a version of yourself that's just slightly off, blurry at the edges, possibly haunted by the ghost of bad haircuts from your past. The bath mat is plush, or at least it's supposed to be. In reality, it's permanently damp and stuck to the floor in several places by what you sincerely hope is just age and age-related adhesive residue. Beside the avocado-colored tub, a plastic caddy holds an entire arsenal of hygiene products. Bubble bath, a bar of Zest soap that's been worn down to the thickness of a communion wafer, and a single bottle of Johnson's baby shampoo that's been sitting there since you had bangs as a child. The toilet itself is an absolute museum piece, upholstered in a fuzzy lid cover that threatens to detach and skitter across the floor if you close it too fast. You stare at it, genuinely contemplating the number of germs that have probably set up a permanent timeshare underneath that cozy green surface. You've never actually seen anyone clean this lid cover. The strategy seems to be just spray it with something labeled lemon fresh and hope for the best. You attempt to brush your teeth, fighting with a plastic cup of tap water that tastes faintly of chlorine and nostalgia. Somewhere under the sink lurks an entire civilization of half-used toothpaste tubes, hotel shampoo bottles that you stole from vacation trips, and Q-tips that have melted into the shape of abstract art. Every few weeks, your mother launches what she calls a cleaning campaign, and she emerges victorious only after sacrificing several dish towels and her last shred of emotional patience. The shower presents its own ordeal entirely. The curtain is printed with a school of fish and colors unknown to nature. It clings to you with a cold, clammy persistence, as if afraid to be left alone. The showerhead is caked with decades of mineral deposits, offering you two choices: scalding hot water or glacial cold. The faucet handles are technically labeled hot and cold, but in reality, it's just a roulette wheel of temperature and regret. You adjust it carefully, hoping to find some middle ground. Personal grooming in the 1980s bathroom is less about style and more about basic survival. You try to find a towel that isn't already damp, discovering instead a pile of mismatched cloths in colors that have faded from sunset peach to emotional beige. The medicine cabinet holds a roll call of family secrets: stale Band-Aids, expired Vicks Vapo Rub, and a bottle of aspirin older than you are. You do your absolute best to wash up, dodging soap bars that shoot out of your hands like greasy missiles, and navigating mysterious hair from a decade's worth of haircuts that's swirling ominously down the drain. The exhaust fan rattles overhead, valiantly trying and spectacularly failing to prevent the slow, inevitable march of mildew. Eventually, you're ready to leave the bathroom, slightly more awake, but possibly less clean than when you entered. You pause in the doorway, wondering if that mysterious green stain in the corner is actually growing before you entered, but you decide it's best not to investigate. This is not a place for answers. This is a place for acceptance. You tiptoe back into the hallway, your feet trailing a faint scent of bleach and self-doubt. The avocado green trauma follows you like a distant memory. You've successfully survived another encounter with the suburban bathroom, where the decor is eternal, the mold is multi-generational, and the only certainty is that you'll be back tomorrow to do this all over again. As you shut the door behind you, you take a deep breath, careful not to inhale too deeply and get a second wind of that chemical smell, thankful, at the very least, that you didn't step on a Lego on your way out. Time to select your outfit from a closet that contains exactly two types of clothing: stiff denim and something that could legitimately catch fire if you look at it funny. You settle on a turtleneck that's equal parts static electricity and pure aspiration. The closet itself is a genuine study in fashion trauma and poor life choices. A row of plastic hangers creaks under the weight of colors that genuinely don't occur anywhere in nature. You're confronted with a forest of pastels, mustards, and at least three different items in dusty rows. A color invented specifically to clash with everything else you own. There's a pair of acid-wash jeans so rigid they can stand up by themselves without any support. An entire wall of ill-advised vests hangs there. There's a sweater vest that haunts you like an unfinished tax return, just staring at you with judgment. You run your hand across the racks, feeling the unyielding crispness of corduroy, the plasticky smoothness of imitation leather that squeaks when you touch it, and a section devoted entirely to athletic wear that consists of nothing but tube socks and a windbreaker that could probably double as a parachute in an emergency. Somewhere lurking in the back is the itchy wool sweater your grandmother hand-knitted years ago. It's shaped vaguely like a human torso, colored like static on a broken TV, and designed in a way that renders you functionally immobile. You pick up a shirt that claims on its label to be breathable, but the moment you try it on, it sticks to your skin in a way that defies the actual laws of physics and common sense. The polyester blend crackles loudly with static electricity, making your hair stand on end and your self-esteem gently wilt. Every time you slip it over your head, there's a 50-50 chance you'll generate enough static electricity to reprogram your family's television. Next comes the pants decision, which is basically a binary choice with no good options. Either jeans so tight you need to lie down on your bed and have someone help zip them up, or dress slacks that promise easy care but somehow require both ironing and emotional support. You recall the last time you wore corduroy? The way it broadcasted your every single move with a loud swish-swish that made stealth absolutely impossible, especially during the school bus ride. Socks are always a wild card. You might get lucky and find a matching pair. Or you might have to settle for two different shades of brown and hope the dim lighting in class saves you from ridicule. You consider the tube socks with the colored stripes that are still damp from yesterday's attempt at athletic glory in gym class. Their elastic band is already plotting your eventual downfall. You reach for your sneakers, their canvas faded and toe caps slightly melted from an encounter with the family's old space heater. If it's a special day, there's always the threat of being forced into dress shoes, plastic loafers that squeak with every single step and seem to harvest every puddle within a 10-mile radius. You slip into your chosen shoes and stand back to admire your work. You look, for lack of a better word, prepared. Prepared for a fire drill, prepared for an accidental electroshock, or prepared for an impromptu dance-off in the cafeteria. You glance in the mirror, half expecting to see a cast member from _quote_0_ staring back. The turtleneck clings to you like a desperate secret and is equal parts style statement and electrical hazard. Your hair, already suffering from a close encounter with polyester, puffs up in rebellion. You briefly consider wearing a hat, but the only options available are a pom-pom beanie or a visor that screams _quote_1_ downstairs. Your mother offers unsolicited feedback on your appearance. Quote 2, she says, which in 1980s parent speak is both a compliment and a challenge. She tries to tame your hair with a spritz of hairspray, creating a chemical cloud that lingers for hours and will later fuse with the classroom's chalk dust to form something that might be a new mineral. You step out into the world, your outfit rustling and crackling with every movement, already bracing for whatever the day's adventures might bring, and the near certainty that no matter what happens, at least you won't freeze or catch a cold. You might possibly catch fire, but you definitely won't be cold. So you take a deep breath, square your polyester-clad shoulders, and step into another day of the 1980s. You are, for better or worse, dressed for survival. Downstairs, the kitchen hums with the barely contained stress of unspoken grievances. Your mom is orchestrating the entire morning chaos with a spatula and the patience of a Cold War diplomat. The microwave, the size of a small car, humming ominously in the corner. Every meal that comes out of it tastes vaguely of plastic and broken dreams. You hover in the doorway, careful not to block the path to the refrigerator. That's a cardinal sin punishable by a passive-aggressive sigh and a reminder that some people are actually trying to accomplish things. The refrigerator itself is wallpapered in school calendars, expired coupons, and a cryptic flowchart outlining exactly who is responsible for cleaning the litter box this week. On top of the fridge, an old coffee can stores loose pennies, rubber bands, and batteries of questionable vintage, all watched over by a lonely ceramic owl. The linoleum floor is a visual riot of geometric patterns and mysterious stains, covered with a thick glaze of lemon-scented mop solution and spilled tang that's been here so long it's become part of the design. The air is heavy with the aroma of instant coffee, burnt toast, and whatever experimental casserole happened to result from last night's dinner. Its remains are quietly congealing on a plate in the sink, next to a spoon that no one will claim responsibility for. Breakfast in this kitchen is a multi-front operation. You're expected to assemble your own meal from the contents of a bread box that seems to produce only the heels of loaves, a tub of margarine, and a rotating cast of jams, all labeled with the year in case of emergency. There is always one forgotten banana with a bruised exterior and a texture somewhere between edible and science project. The cereal sits on the counter in an open box. The plastic liner is crumpled and half empty, as though a raccoon has already given it a thorough inspection. In the center of it all, your mom presides with a steely gaze, flipping pancakes that resemble abstract maps of Europe and scrambling eggs with the distracted ferocity of someone who's already had her patience tested by bickering over the television remote. She wears an apron decorated with cartoon vegetables, though the effect is less whimsical chef and more do not cross this line. You know better than to critique the orange juice, which has been reconstituted from concentrate and possesses the faint tang of penny tray coins. Communication in this kitchen is swift and indirect. Requests are relayed via pointed looks, eyebrow raises, and the occasional tapping of a spoon against a plate. Your sibling attempts to sneak a Pop-Tart, only to be intercepted by the subtle clatter of the toaster lever and a sideways glance that means, try it, and you'll see what happens. Your dad makes a brief appearance, searching frantically for his travel mug and muttering darkly about how someone moved my thermos, which is code for I don't want to be the first one to apologize for whatever happened. The Tupperware drawer remains the final frontier of this space, a chaotic jungle of warped plastic, unpaired lids, and containers with mysterious and unknown origins. No matter what you pack for lunch, it will inevitably leak or explode, perfuming your backpack with the scent of old tuna for the rest of the semester. The morning soundtrack features the clink of silverware, the drone of local news, and the low-level hum of simmering resentment. Someone forgot to soak the oatmeal pot, and now it has fused with the stove in an act of passive defiance. Above the table, a dusty light fixture wobbles slightly, as if exhausted by years of illuminating tense family discussions about overdue library books and questionable report card grades. You retreat to the kitchen table, an ancient slab of faux wood scored with knife marks and gouged by generations of homework meltdowns, just in time for the grand distribution of vitamins. A clattering bottle is set before you, and you're forced to swallow a cherry-flavored tablet the size of a Monopoly die. Your sibling is excused after making a show of gagging. You soldier on, rewarded with a barely thawed ego sandwich. Your mother finally sits down, mug in hand, her gaze distant and unfocused. You can tell she's calculating laundry, dentist appointments, the logistics of surviving another week without a mutiny. The kitchen is her domain, her bunker, her diplomatic headquarters. Every spoonful of cereal, every muffled sigh, every carefully averted argument is another act in the daily theater of truce and tension. You gather your things, ducking the final wave of instructions. Don't forget your lunch. Tell your brother to put on shoes. And the ever-present reminder, be nice to each other. You nod, escaping just as the microwave beeps, summoning all of you for one last showdown. You watch in absolute horror as your lunch is being assembled before your eyes. Bologna, processed cheese, an apple that could probably survive nuclear winter. Everything is wrapped in cling film with the tightness of a space shuttle. The lunchroom is a battleground of status, pudding cups, and bruised fruit. This daily ritual begins at the kitchen counter under the resigned gaze of your mother, who is clearly convinced she's fueling your education with nothing but nitrates and quiet desperation. The loaf of Wonder Bread is pillowy white, with the texture of packing peanuts and the nutritional value to match. Each slice sticks to the roof of your mouth with the clingy affection of a barnacle. You don't remember the last time you saw bread with a visible grain or a color darker than dental enamel. The bologna is a pale, perfectly round disc that looks suspiciously like it was made by the same company that manufactures school gym mats. It has a tangy chemical perfume and is sliced to a thickness that screams, "We value quantity over quality." It's paired with a slab of processed cheese, bright orange, and individually wrapped in its own piece of edible plastic. By the time the sandwich is complete, it radiates an aura of defeat that no amount of mayonnaise could possibly mask. The apple, always an apple, never a pear or a plum, has skin like ballistic nylon and a waxy sheen that could deflect a laser. You genuinely suspect it's the same apple you brought home last week, endlessly recycled until one of you finally gives up and eats it. A handful of chips, a single stick of celery as a legal requirement, and if you're lucky, a pudding cup with a peeled-back foil lid round out the meal. The pudding is always chocolate and always slightly warm by lunchtime, as if it's been gently incubating in your backpack. Everything is meticulously entombed in cling film, twisted and tucked at the corners as if it might someday re-enter Earth's atmosphere and requires proper protection. Your lunch bag, a faded relic emblazoned with your favorite cartoon character, carries the subtle perfume of years' worth of peanut butter and mystery odors. The zipper sticks. There are suspicious crumbs in every pocket, and you half expect to find a note from your past self begging for better snacks. Once you reach school, lunch becomes an exercise in social survival. The cafeteria is a windowless bunker that echoes with the shriek of plastic trays and the dull thud of unopened milk cartons hitting tables. You slide into your usual seat, already eyeing the competition. There are kids with thermoses containing last night's lasagna. They're the elite. Those who buy hot lunch are the wild cards. And then there's the kid who somehow has sushi, who is regarded with a mix of awe and deep suspicion. Lunch is a delicate dance of trading, bartering, and outright subterfuge. Someone offers you a bag of Fritos in exchange for your pudding. You hesitate. Chocolate pudding is the only true currency here, but the allure of corn chips is undeniably strong. Around you, deals are being brokered with the gravitas of a nuclear summit. Lunchables are the rarest commodity. They're tiny processed meats and crackers coveted like black market caviar. You unwrap your sandwich and inspect the layers. The bread is already soggy at the edges. The cheese has somehow fused with the bologna into a kind of edible laminate, and the lettuce, if it makes an appearance, is limp and see-through like an old shower curtain. Still, you chew stoically. There's honor in eating what you're given, even if it tastes faintly of existential dread. The lunch monitor stalks the aisles, enforcing order with the rattling authority of a Cold War border guard. You risk taking off your sandwich crust, hiding the evidence in your napkin. The kid next to you launches an orange peel like a tactical missile, and you duck instinctively. The apple rolls to the end of the table where it's claimed by someone braver or hungrier than you. Finally, lunch ends with a great disposal operation. The collective march to the trash cans where bruised fruit and half-eaten sandwiches meet their doom. You pack up, hoping desperately for better luck tomorrow. Maybe peanut butter. Maybe at least a pudding that's still cold. Congratulations. You've survived another round in the lunchroom arms race, clutching your empty lunch bag like a treaty signed under duress. Victory isn't measured in calories, but in memories. Sweet, sticky, and just a little bit absurd. Back at home, your parents have absolutely mastered the ancient art of expressing rage through clenched teeth and pointed silences. Dad's discipline style is equal parts sighing and long, disappointed glances that make you wish you'd just get yelled at instead. You live in constant fear of the phrase, "We need to have a talk." The house vibrates with a quiet, simmering tension like a sitcom soundtrack with the laughter turned completely off. The 1980s parent is a genuine marvel of passive intensity, capable of delivering a week's worth of scolding with a single meaningful pause. Volume is for amateurs. A truly skilled parent wields silence as both sword and shield, cutting deeper than any shout ever could. You remember every moment leading up to that inevitable talk, the clatter of a dropped plate, the accidental dent in the station wagon, the sibling squabble that ended in actual tears, the shattering of something ceramic and vaguely sentimental that's been in the family for years. The response is always exactly the same. The slow, deliberate removal of Dad's glasses, The pursed lips, the silence so heavy you can literally hear the kitchen clock ticking its disapproval. Your mother, for her part, deploys her own arsenal of discipline strategies. The sharp inhale, the laser precision eyebrow raise, the hands on hips with an apron flapping with each sigh. She doesn't yell. She expresses her concern in a tone so low and controlled you wonder if she's secretly a government interrogator. On weekends, punishments arrive like weather fronts, predictable, but somehow always catching you off guard. Grounded means exile to your room, a place stripped of fun, electronics, and dignity, where you're forced to contemplate your choices while staring at beige wallpaper. Sometimes you're sentenced to write a formal apology, an exercise in literary regret that will be read aloud at the dinner table like a public shaming. The mere threat of this fate is enough to keep you walking the straight and narrow for at least 36 hours. If the crime is especially grave, you face the ultimate in 1980s consequences, the disappointed talk. Dad sits at the edge of your bed, hands folded, his voice soft and even. Quote 10, he says. Quote 11. It's the emotional equivalent of a meteor strike. You'd honestly prefer he just shouted. At least then you could respond, defend yourself, maybe even muster a tear for tactical advantage. But no, he lets the silence swell like a slow-motion guilt tsunami until you finally confess to crimes you didn't even commit just to make it stop. The most advanced parental technique, however, is the group discipline session. The phrase is delivered with the gravitas of a hostage negotiation. We need to have a family meeting. Everyone sits in a circle in the living room, perched nervously on the edge of faded corduroy sofas. Mom and Dad take turns explaining the importance of communication while you and your siblings exchange frantic glances, silently blaming each other for the family's current crisis. Whether it's a missing TV remote, a shattered heirloom, or a mysterious dent in the hallway drywall that nobody can explain. No matter how heated the subject, voices rarely rise above a conversational hum. The threat is always implicit. We're not mad, just very, very concerned. In 1980s parent code, this translates to, we are absolutely furious, but we're saving our breakdown for therapy. You study their faces, looking for clues. Dad's brow is furrowed. Mom's lips are pressed tight. Their sentences are so measured you could use them to calibrate a Swiss watch. And of course, there's always the list, a running tally of your misdeeds trotted out during moments of peak disappointment. It's recited with the precision of a court stenographer. This isn't just about the vase, they say. It's also about the late homework, the muddy shoes, the science project we're still finding baking soda from. You realize quickly that in 1980s discipline, nothing is ever truly forgotten. It's just filed away for a future monologue. The station wagon is both a vehicle and a rolling archive of lost French fries and spilled hopes. Every family trip is punctuated by the scent of vinyl, cigarette smoke, and the distant echo of someone spilling milk somewhere in the back seat. Seat belts are a rumor at best. The morning sun glints off the faux wood paneling as you pile into the car, jostling for position like gladiators in a polyester coliseum. The air inside is thick, equal parts new car air freshener and the unmistakable tang of decades-old upholstery that's absorbed every smell from the last 15 years. Somewhere in the back, a window crank turns with a grinding noise that's half mechanical, half existential crisis. Your father is captain of this ship. his domain marked by a collection of mysterious knobs, a half-empty thermos, and a glove compartment filled with nothing remotely useful. He adjusts the mirrors with ritual seriousness, then slaps the dashboard 3 times, a superstitious tick meant to ward off breakdowns. In the front passenger seat, your mother shuffles a stack of coupons, a road atlas, and an emergency roll of paper towels that has at one point mopped up everything from spilled soda to the tears of defeat. You and your siblings scramble into the back seat, fighting over whose turn it is to sit by the window. The rear-facing row, that hallowed back seat, is reserved for the brave, the exiled, or the child with the least motion sickness. Once seated, you're immediately surrounded by the relics of road trips past: a petrified gummy bear stuck to the armrest, a coloring book with every page scribbled in neon marker, and a McDonald's toy that's fused to the floor mat by an ancient sticky ooze that nobody can identify. Seat belts, theoretically present, are mostly wedged between the seats or so tangled that any attempt to wear one becomes a logic puzzle. "Just tuck it behind your back," your mom says, as if this is perfectly sound safety advice in the event of a sudden stop. You're pretty sure the only thing holding you in during a turn is centrifugal force and your sibling's outstretched arm. The soundtrack of every drive is a blend of AM radio, static, and the urgent clicking of the lighter as your dad prepares his morning cigarette. The window cracks open just enough to let in a blast of cold air, but somehow never quite enough to actually air out the smoke. You inhale a cocktail of tobacco, pine-scented air freshener, and the faintest whiff of yesterday's leftover French fries. Every surface in the car is slightly sticky. You suspect this is a factory feature. The cup holders are graveyards for loose change, stray Cheerios, and the occasional melted crayon. Somewhere under the driver's seat, a single ancient French fry has fossilized, quietly observing the passing decades like an archaeological artifact. When the car hits a bump, you can hear something rattling. Maybe loose tools. Maybe the hopes and dreams of every child who's ever done time on a family road trip. Family outings are an exercise in negotiation and endurance. The windows fog with each exhale, occasionally etched with the artwork of bored children, or in moments of desperation, wiped clear with a sleeve. Your brother flicks a paper football toward the front, earning a withering glare from the rearview mirror. Snacks are distributed with the solemnity of a sacrament. Individually wrapped cheese slices, a Ziploc bag of questionable grapes, and juice boxes warm enough to steep tea. You eat anyway, using the back of a TV guide as your plate. Any crumbs that fall are simply absorbed into the strata of previous lunches. The trip is punctuated by your dad's soft drone of monologue, complaints about traffic, the price of gas, or how nobody appreciates a clean car anymore. Your mother reminds everyone to look for cows, as if spotting livestock is a competitive sport. You try not to make eye contact with the weird hula girl glued to the dashboard, who seems to shake her head in silent judgment at your family's life choices. Eventually, someone asks the forbidden question. Quote, 18. The answer is always no. And you settle back, lulled by the rhythmic bounce of the shocks and the certainty that no matter how far you travel, you'll never escape the smell of spilled milk or the knowledge that somewhere in the depths of the seat cushions, your lost allowance is quietly collecting interest. You arrive at school, a gladiatorial arena of denim jackets, hairspray, and low-level bullying. Teachers assign worksheets with the weary resignation of people who have given up hope. You're taught everything except how to process emotions. The first thing you notice is the smell. Part disinfectant, part gym socks, and a faint undertone of chalk dust and pure panic. You shuffle into the hallway, careful not to step in the puddle left by someone's leaking backpack or the tears of whoever just found out their trapper-keeper got stolen. The lockers line the walls like miniature vaults, each one decorated with peeling stickers, cryptic graffiti, and the desperate pleas of students who have lost the combination for the third time this month. Every classroom is a battlefield of social hierarchy. The cool kids hold court near the windows, sunlight bouncing off their perfectly feathered hair like a signal flare. The rest of you are arranged in a complex ecosystem. Nerds clutching Dungeons and Dragons manuals, goths huddled together in silent solidarity, band kids assembling their instruments with the focus of a pit crew at the Indianapolis 500. If you're lucky, you can camouflage yourself somewhere in the middle, invisible, but not unpopular enough to become a target. Your teacher, a weary veteran of the chalkboard wars, stands at the front of the room, brandishing a dry erase marker that hasn't written properly since Reagan's first term. Lessons are delivered in monotone, multiplication tables, the preamble to the Constitution, a brief and confusing explanation of the Dewey Decimal System. There's an entire unit on how to balance a checkbook, but nothing about how to tell someone you have a crush on them or what to do with all the anxiety swirling inside your turtleneck. Hygiene is a dicey proposition. The bathrooms are tiled in a color best described as institutional despair. The soap dispensers are always empty, and the hand dryers blow air colder than the average recess in February. You learn early on to avoid drinking from the water fountain after third period. By then, it's more bacteria than water. The cafeteria is no safer. A sea of sticky tables and the faint, haunting memory of yesterday's sloppy joes. Navigating social life requires equal parts cunning, speed, and the ability to endure embarrassment. Someone will inevitably call you a poser, a weirdo, or if they're feeling particularly creative, invent a nickname based on a minor wardrobe malfunction that will follow you into adulthood. The schoolyard is both a sanctuary and a war zone. Kickball games with unspoken alliances, four-square matches where grudges are born, and the slow, tense line at the payphone as you pretend to call your mom but really just want to look busy. Hair is a survival strategy all its own. The unspoken rule is simple. The bigger, the better. You borrow hairspray from a friend, careful not to asphyxiate yourself, and sculpt your bangs into a monument to hope and aerosol technology. A rogue gust of wind is your mortal enemy. The popular kid's hair seems to defy the laws of physics, impervious to both gravity and teacher scorn. You learn to keep your head down, do your homework, and never, under any circumstances, admit you actually like the recorder unit in music class. Your emotional education comes from the occasional after-school special on TV featuring earnest kids hugging out their trauma, or from a trusted friend who, despite never making eye contact, will quietly share a pack of fruit roll-ups after a rough day. At the final bell, you burst into the hallway clutching your homework and dignity in equal measure. You've survived another day in the Darwinian Petri dish that is 1980 school, untouched by real empathy, but armed with feathered hair and the knowledge that in this jungle, Blending in is sometimes the most powerful skill of all. At home, your siblings are both your greatest enemies and your only allies. Every interaction is a negotiation involving threats, bribes, and occasionally a well-thrown TV remote. The kitchen is your diplomatic headquarters. The living room is your battlefield. The hallway is a demilitarized zone where ceasefires are tenuous at best. The day begins with a struggle for resources. The last bowl of name-brand cereal, the only unwrinkled pair of tube socks, or if you're feeling bold, the shower with hot water still available. Every victory is fleeting. Every loss is a strategic setback you'll brood over until next Wednesday. There are rules of engagement, most of them unwritten and enforced with a mixture of intimidation and mutual blackmail. You don't tattle about the time your older sibling sneaked in after curfew, and in exchange, they don't mention that you accidentally fed the goldfish Pop Rocks. You've mastered the art of silent communication, a glare that means, "Don't you dare." A pointed cough from across the dinner table, the mysterious vanishing of a favorite cassette tape just before your siblings' friends come over. No one is safe from surprise attacks. Pillow fights erupt with no warning and end with someone tripping over a stray shoe or being banished to the far end of the sofa. Remote control skirmishes are fought with cunning, sometimes brute force, sometimes a clever distraction involving the family dog, and a conveniently placed slice of bologna. Temporary truces are called only when the parental authorities intervene, or more importantly, when there's a new episode of Knight Rider, and you both want to see how Kid escapes this time. Bedrooms are sovereign territories, each with their own customs and carefully defended borders. If you step even a toe into your sibling's room without the proper clearance, usually a bribe of gum or a solemn promise to return borrowed stickers, you risk an international incident that could last all week. The ultimate act of war is touching someone else's stuff. A prized action figure, a Walkman, or the holy grail of all 1980s possessions, a scratch-free VHS tape. Yet beneath this endless tension, there is an unspoken code of loyalty. Outside the house is fair game, but only you are allowed to torment your sibling. Let someone on the school bus call your little brother a dork, and suddenly you're launching a counter-offensive with insults so sharp they could cut through a trapper-keeper. In moments of crisis, like when you both spill grape juice on the new carpet, you can forge an alliance faster than the Berlin Wall fell, covering for each other with stories that would make a Cold War spy proud. Negotiations are constant. You trade half a pack of great bubble yum for help, sneaking back inside after missing curfew. You promise to switch laundry days if your sister will pretend to be you on the phone with Grandma. Every deal is made with fingers crossed and the knowledge that at any moment the balance of power could shift with a single well-placed tattletale. At family dinners, you're forced into close proximity, eating in tense silence or exchanging under-the-table kicks. The conversation turns to grades or chores, and suddenly it's every child for themselves. Sibling rivalry turns into a kind of performance art. Your sibling launches a subtle attack, quote, 20, and you parry with a counterstrike about their unfortunate haircut choices. But when night falls and the house quiets, a strange détente settles in. You might find yourself sharing secrets in the dark or plotting a joint offensive against your parents' no dessert on weekdays policy. Maybe you'll even join forces to sneak cookies from the kitchen or to survive the boredom of a Sunday spent at the laundromat. Because as much as you might bicker, sabotage, and compete, your sibling is the one person who understands exactly what it means to survive in your household. Together, you form a shifting temporary alliance, a Cold War détente with an unspoken promise. In this bizarre battlefield, you're both in it for the long haul. And tomorrow, the remote is up for grabs again, and the negotiations begin anew. Evenings mean fighting for control of the single television set. The remote is a brick that could literally be used as a weapon. The screen is always tuned to the news, Wheel of Fortune, or that one show your dad insists is good for the family. There are only 3 channels and endless arguments. It starts the moment dinner plates hit the sink. Everyone in the house instinctively migrates toward the living room, drawn by the blue glow like a siren song of cathode rays. The television isn't just a piece of furniture. It's the undisputed throne of the household, perched on a rickety stand and anchored by a mess of tangled cords and a pair of aluminum rabbit ears that require frequent ritualistic adjustment. Sometimes a wad of tin foil is added to improve reception, which does absolutely nothing except make the room look more like a conspiracy theorist's bunker. Securing a good seat is an Olympic sport. You have to move fast, dodge the coffee table, and stake your claim on the couch before your siblings muscle in. The coveted middle spot, close enough to see but far enough to avoid being drafted for remote duty, goes to the quickest and most ruthless. Anyone stuck on the floor gets a lumpy pillow and a view partially blocked by a houseplant that's seen better days. And then the remote. It's an object of awe, a hulking gray rectangle with exactly 6 buttons, most of them sticky, all of them mysterious. It weighs more than your lunchbox, and in the wrong hands, it could do real damage. The moment someone touches it, a hush falls over the room. Negotiations begin. There is no democracy. There are only shifting alliances and the iron will of whoever manages to grab the remote when no one's looking. Dad always wants the news. He pretends it's to stay informed, but you're pretty sure he just likes muttering about the weather forecast and how gas used to be cheaper. When the news is over, the default setting is Wheel of Fortune, which everyone claims not to care about, even though the whole family yells answers at the screen with disturbing intensity. For a glorious 5 minutes, you dream of Saturday morning cartoons, but instead you get 60 minutes of MASH reruns. Or, if the stars align, one of Dad's _quote_22_ programs, which usually features at least one farm animal and a vague lesson about honesty. Arguments erupt at regular intervals. Your little brother wants to watch Knight Rider. Your sister insists on Solid Gold for the dancing. You make a desperate pitch for Alf, but nobody's listening. Each show you manage to watch is a hard-won victory, paid for in chores, bribes, or, if necessary, threats of tattling about who broke the lamp last month. Changing the channel is an act of engineering. The remote only works from exactly one angle, and if the batteries are low, you might need to whack it against your knee or jam a pencil into the battery compartment. Sometimes it's easier to just get up and turn the giant dial on the set itself, risking static shocks and parental wrath if you accidentally flip past Dad's show. Commercial breaks are battlegrounds for snack rights and bathroom sprints. Everyone moves at once, and if you're not back in 30 seconds, you lose your seat. The living room transforms into a swirling dance of potato chips, fruit punch, and the occasional elbow to the ribs. Finally, the night winds down. Dad dozes off in his chair, remote in hand, and the screen flickers with late-night reruns. Someone always gets up to adjust the antenna one last time, only to realize that once again, the best picture comes from standing in the middle of the room, holding the rabbit ears aloft like a living statue. You head to bed, your ears ringing with game show jingles, newscaster banter, and the memory of your family's endless negotiations. Tomorrow, the cycle begins again. 1 TV, 3 channels, and a remote heavy, with the burden of power. Congratulations. You've survived another night as remote control royalty. Never quite the king or queen, but always in the running for the next battle. Homework is a nightly ritual performed at a Formica table sticky with the residue of generations of spilled Kool-Aid. You try to do long division while the family cat launches a guerrilla assault on your notebook. If you find a sharpened pencil, it's a genuine miracle. The kitchen table is your battlefield, lit by a single overhead lamp that buzzes faintly like it's struggling to remain functional in the 1980s. The light is too bright in the middle and too dim everywhere else, which means you're always half squinting, half sighing, and fully regretting every choice that led you here. The surface has a permanent sheen, some combination of grease, juice, and whatever that casserole was last Tuesday. You press your worksheet down, and it makes a soft peeling sound like the table is reluctant to let you go. You spread out your school supplies, which are really just whatever survived the day inside your backpack. A crumpled folder, a spiral notebook with the corners bent like it's been through a war, a ruler that smells like cafeteria pizza. And then you start searching for the one thing standing between you and academic collapse. A pencil. There are no pencils. There is, however, a pencil-shaped object with no eraser and teeth marks near the top, suggesting someone once tried to chew their way out of math. You attempt to sharpen it, but the sharpener is the cheap kind. One twist, and it eats the pencil like a wood chipper. Now you have a pencil stump. Congratulations! You've invented the world's saddest writing tool. You look around for alternatives. A pen? Forbidden. Your teachers treat pen like it's a gateway drug. A marker? Too thick. A crayon? Technically possible, but that's how you end up writing an essay in magenta and explaining to your teacher that you're exploring new forms of expression. Not a great look. Eventually, you borrow a pencil from your sibling. The negotiation is tense, like an international hostage exchange. You promise not to lose it. You promise not to chew it. You promise not to hold it weird. You take the pencil like it's the last functioning oxygen tank on a sinking submarine. Now comes the homework itself. You stare at the long division problem. It stares back. It's printed in that faint gray ink that makes everything look like it was created by a ghost. Your brain is tired. Your stomach is full of questionable dinner. Somewhere in the living room, Jeopardy is playing, and you can hear your dad answering confidently and incorrectly. You begin to work. The family cat chooses this moment to begin its nightly campaign of psychological warfare. It leaps onto the table like a furry missile, sprawls directly on your worksheet, and starts licking itself with the slow confidence of someone who pays no bills. You try to move it, but the cat digs in like it owns the mortgage. You scooch your notebook around the cat's body and attempt to do math in the tiny space left behind, as if this is normal. Your mother passes through the kitchen carrying laundry, like she's been doing it since the dawn of time, which in the 1980s she basically has. She pauses, sees you struggling, and says something soothing like, "You better get that done or you'll regret it later." And then she leaves. No help, no explanation, just a vague warning about the future, like homework is a prophecy and you're about to be punished by the gods of arithmetic. Your pencil begins to dull. You try to sharpen it again. The sharpener eats another chunk. You're now working with something roughly the size of a toothpick. Every time you write, your fingers cramp. Your eraser leaves pink smudges everywhere, like your mistakes are bleeding out onto the paper. Meanwhile, your sibling is doing their homework too. But somehow, they're thriving. They're flipping pages, highlighting, underlining, smiling. You hate them, but quietly. The 1980s doesn't allow open emotional honesty. You bottle it up like a Capri Sun. The clock ticks. The house grows quieter. Your dad falls asleep in his chair. The TV hisses softly. The kitchen smells like dish soap and faint despair. At last, you finish the last problem, exhausted, smudged with graphite, and spiritually older. You stack your papers neatly, knowing full well you will forget them on the counter tomorrow. And as you finally stand up and shuffle toward bed, you realize the real lesson of 1980s homework wasn't math. It was endurance. Also, the fact that pencils were apparently more rare than gold. And somehow, you survived. The Tupperware cabinet is an unstable Jenga tower. Each time you open it, you risk a plastic avalanche and a lecture about wasting money. None of the lids fit any of the containers, but that's tomorrow's problem. You approach it slowly, like a bomb squad technician with a mild fear of disappointment. It sits above the counter like an ancient cursed tomb, quiet, innocent, pretending it doesn't contain chaos. But you know the truth. Everyone in the house knows the truth. This cabinet has its own weather system, its own gravitational pull. It doesn't store food containers, it stores tension. All you want is something simple, maybe a container for leftover spaghetti, maybe a lid for the casserole dish your mother is aggressively pretending she didn't burn, maybe a little plastic tub to bring cookies to school without them turning into a sugar dust avalanche in your lunch bag. But the moment you wrap your fingers around the cabinet handle, you feel the invisible presence of your mother's spirit hovering behind you. Not physically, spiritually. The cabinet opens with a soft creak, and instantly you're greeted by a confusing mosaic of colors. Faded turquoise, sickly yellow, that weird translucent brown that makes every container look like it's already holding old soup. Some pieces are warped from the dishwasher. Some are stained permanently orange from spaghetti sauce. Some appear to be made from the same plastic as action figure limbs. You barely breathe as you open the door because you know one wrong move could trigger the collapse. These containers are stacked with the reckless confidence of a toddler building a tower out of blocks. A large bowl balances on a smaller bowl. A container lid is wedged sideways between two cups, like it was placed there by an exhausted archaeologist. And somewhere deep inside, you can see a mysterious object that might be a lid or might be part of the vacuum cleaner. You carefully slide one container out. 3 lids fall. One hits you in the shoulder. Another bounces onto the counter. A third slides under the stove, never to be seen again, where it will presumably join the fossilized French fries and form a new civilization. The cabinet remains open, vibrating slightly as if offended. You reach in again, trying to find a lid that matches anything, but the lids are like snowflakes, unique, misplaced, somehow always the wrong size. You hold one up to a container, and it's almost right. Almost. Like a tragic love story. The corners don't align, the seal doesn't close, the lid sits on top, mocking you with its near compatibility. And then you hear it, the sigh. Not a loud one, not dramatic. Just that perfectly calibrated 1980s parental sigh that says, underscore, quote, underscore 24, underscore your mom appears behind you, arms crossed, expression calm, but deadly. This is her cabinet, her territory, her emotional battlefield. She doesn't even need to speak. Her eyes say everything. You attempt a weak explanation. I just needed a container. She nods slowly, as if you've just confessed to sabotaging the economy. Then she begins the lecture, a smooth, practiced monologue that she could deliver in her sleep. Quote, 26. And the strangest part is she is correct. These containers did cost money. They were purchased at one of those 1980s living room Tupperware parties where women drank punch, whispered about Carol's divorce, and bought stackable containers like they were investing in the future. These weren't just storage items. These were symbols. They represented adulthood, domestic competence, control. And now you've caused a lid incident. Your mom begins restacking the cabinet with the precision of a military engineer. She presses lids into place like she's sealing ancient tombs. She balances bowls perfectly. She mutters under her breath about how nobody appreciates anything. And you just stand there, holding your useless container, feeling like you've betrayed the family legacy. You try one more time to find the right lid, but the truth is undeniable. It doesn't exist. The matching lid disappeared years ago, possibly eaten by the same cosmic force that consumed socks in the dryer. It is gone, and your mother knows it. But she refuses to admit it, because admitting it would mean accepting chaos. It would mean acknowledging the cabinet is not a system. It's a lie. So you choose a lid that's close enough and gently place it on top. It doesn't snap. It doesn't seal. It sits there loosely like a hat that doesn't fit. Your mom watches you in silence. Then she says, in the calm voice of someone trying not to start a war, tomorrow, you're cleaning this cabinet out. And just like that, the cabinet door closes. The plastic jungle returns to silence, and you walk away knowing you've survived yet another small domestic horror of 1980s life. Not a war exactly, but definitely a battle. The family dog is an emotional sponge, soaking up every argument and leftover casserole. He's lived on a diet of table scraps and questionable treats. And yet, somehow, he's the healthiest member of the household. You don't remember when the dog became part of the family. He's always just been there, like the couch, like the smell of the carpet, like the mysterious dent in the hallway drywall that nobody talks about. He's a medium-sized mutt with a name like Buddy or Duke or something equally vague and optimistic. He has one ear that always flops slightly wrong, a tail that thumps like a drum whenever someone enters the room, and eyes that say, I have seen things, and I would still like a bite of your sandwich. He's the only creature in the house who doesn't judge you, which is impressive because he has watched you cry over homework, eat cereal for dinner, and attempt to style your hair into something the school photo camera won't interpret as tragic. The dog accepts it all. He is unconditional love wrapped in shedding fur and the faint scent of outdoors. In the 1980s family home, the dog is more than a pet. He is the unofficial therapist. When Mom and Dad argue in the kitchen about money, the dog quietly lies under the table, ears twitching, absorbing every tense syllable. When your siblings scream at each other over the TV remote, the dog retreats to the hallway like a veteran who survived this war before. When you get grounded and collapse onto your bed in defeat, the dog follows you in and places his heavy head on your leg like a warm, silent apology for the world. He doesn't fix anything, but he makes you feel like it might be fixable. And the dog's diet is genuinely disturbing. His official food comes in a giant bag with a picture of a very confident-looking golden retriever on the front. The kibble itself smells like crushed vitamins and broken dreams. But the dog rarely survives on kibble alone. No, he's living like a king on the scraps of your family's daily chaos. Meatloaf crusts, cold hot dog ends, the corner of a grilled cheese sandwich your sibling refused to eat because it touched the plate wrong. Sometimes, when Mom is in a generous mood, she gives him a treat. Usually, one of those dry, bone-shaped biscuits that looks like it was carved from compressed sawdust. Other times, she tosses him something she calls underscore, quote, underscore 29, underscore, which might be half a slice of bologna wrapped around a piece of cheese. He catches it mid-air like a trained athlete, tail wagging, eyes gleaming with gratitude and cholesterol. The dog is also the household's vacuum cleaner. If you drop food on the floor, you have approximately 3 seconds before the dog arrives like an emergency cleanup crew. Crumbs, chips, cereal, half a cookie that rolled under the table. He hoovers everything up with the efficiency of a machine built for one purpose: consumption. In many ways, he is the only reason the carpet isn't fully coated in old snacks and regret. And yet, somehow, he is thriving. While the humans in this house are fueled by caffeine, stress, and condensed soup-based casseroles, the dog is vibrant. His coat is shiny. His eyes are bright. His energy is endless. He races through the backyard like he's training for the Olympics, even though his last meal included a suspicious amount of gravy and something your mom called just a little bit of ham fat. He naps with the confidence of someone who has never paid a bill. His schedule is simple: patrol the neighborhood for squirrels, bark at the mailman like it's his sacred duty, return indoors to emotionally stabilize the entire family without anyone thanking him. He's loyal, patient, and slightly gassy. Sometimes late at night, when the house goes quiet and the television hum fades into silence, the dog shifts in his sleep and lets out a small sigh. It's a deep, contented exhale, like he's processing the day's chaos and filing it away somewhere safe. You watch him for a moment, feeling strangely calm, because in a world of loud parents, tense dinners, and sibling warfare, the dog is the one constant. He doesn't care about grades. He doesn't care about appearance. He doesn't care about the fact that your mother just cried quietly while folding laundry. He just wants to sit near you, love you, and maybe, if you're not looking, eat the last bite of casserole off your plate. And honestly, that's probably the healthiest coping mechanism anyone in the house has. Dinner is a time for togetherness and thinly veiled resentment. Conversation topics include grades, the price of gas, and why you shouldn't talk back. The only thing more dangerous than disagreeing is refusing seconds. You take your seat at the table like you're reporting for duty. The dining area smells like brown meat, boiled vegetables, and whatever canned ingredient your mother just experimented with because it was on sale. The table itself is covered with a vinyl tablecloth, printed with fruit that looks vaguely diseased. If your elbow sticks to it when you lean forward, That's just the price of family unity. The meal arrives in a series of serving dishes that clatter onto the table with authority. There's always one casserole, always. It could be tuna, noodles, and cream of something. It could be potatoes, ham, and a mysterious layer of crushed crackers. It could be something that was originally intended to be lasagna, but became a bake halfway through because nobody in this house has time for structure. Your mother takes the first seat, setting down her fork like she's placing a gavel. Your father appears next, loosening his tie with a sigh and settling into his chair like he's about to judge a court case. Your siblings shuffle in, already tense from their day, their hunger making them more aggressive than usual. The dog is stationed nearby, eyes fixed on the table with unwavering devotion, like a furry little witness to the entire event. Everyone begins eating immediately because dinner in the 1980s is not something you savor. It's something you survive. For the first few minutes, the only sounds are chewing, clinking utensils, and the distant hum of the television in the living room. This silence is not peaceful. It's the kind of silence where everyone is waiting for something to go wrong, like a suspense movie but with meatloaf. Then the conversation begins. Dad clears his throat, which is the official signal that the evening's emotional cross-examination is about to start. He asks about school. This is not a question. This is a trap. You answer carefully, underscore, quote underscore 31 underscore. Your father nods slowly as if you've just said something deeply suspicious. Fine, he repeats, testing the word like it might contain lies. And then it happens. Grades. Your mother asks about your math test. Your sister suddenly becomes fascinated by her mashed potatoes. Your brother stares into space like he's mentally relocating to another family. You give a vague number, hoping it's acceptable, but you can already feel the air shifting. Dad's fork slows down. Mom's eyes narrow slightly. Somewhere in the room, a dog tail stops wagging. Your father launches into a lecture that begins with responsibility and ends with a reminder that we didn't have it this easy when we were kids. He mentions walking to school. He mentions working hard. He mentions the price of gas. Somehow, everything connects back to gas. You chew your food quietly, nodding just enough to appear respectful, while also calculating how quickly you can escape to your room after this without looking suspicious. But leaving early is impossible. Dinner is a ritual. You don't leave the table until you're dismissed, like a medieval servant who's done too little sweeping. Then comes the most dangerous moment of the entire meal, the offer of seconds. Your mother leans forward and asks, quote, 34. This is not about hunger. This is not about food. This is about gratitude. It is about showing appreciation for the work she did, the meal she created, and the emotional stability she's barely holding together using canned soup and a wooden spoon. If you say no, you are rejecting her efforts. If you hesitate, you're insulting her. If you say yes, you are committing yourself to a second round of tuna noodle regret. You smile politely and say, quote, 35. Your mother immediately piles your plate like she's preparing you for a famine, and you accept it with the quiet resignation of a prisoner who has been offered extra rations. Your father watches approvingly. This is how you win, not with honesty, not with courage, with compliance. And heaven help you if you talk back. Talking back doesn't mean arguing. It means explaining. It means having your own opinion. It means using a tone that suggests you're a human being and not a slightly disobedient appliance. If you so much as question a statement about school, chores, or why it's your job to take out the trash, you're reminded that you're not an equal. You're a child, a dependent, a small creature still learning your place. The dinner table is where values are taught, not gently, not kindly, but effectively. Eventually, the meal ends. Plates are scraped. The casserole dish is covered in foil and shoved into the fridge like it's going to live there forever. Your father rises, satisfied. Your mother begins cleaning with the speed of someone trying not to think about her own life. Your siblings scatter like startled animals. You step away from the table, stomach full, heart slightly tense, and mind buzzing. Chores are doled out with military precision. Vacuuming the stairs is a rite of passage. Dusting is performed with a can of lemon-scented guilt. No one knows where the dust comes from, but everyone is sure it's your fault. It begins with the list printed in cursive, taped to the fridge, and color-coded with a highlighter that ran out in 1983. The chore list is sacred law. You don't question it. You don't interpret it. You simply obey. Every family member has assignments strategically distributed to cause the maximum amount of resentment with the minimum amount of actual effectiveness. Your job this week, vacuuming the stairs and wiping down surfaces, which sounds simple until you realize surfaces means everything from the TV screen to the weird ceramic duck that collects pennies on the sideboard. Vacuuming the stairs is a punishment disguised as responsibility. First, you have to drag the vacuum, an industrial beige monstrosity that weighs as much as a small horse, up each step like you're reenacting Everest with less oxygen and more extension cords. The hose flails behind you like an angry robot tail, knocking into walls and threatening to decapitate anyone who passes by too quickly. You plug it in, and the whole house dims slightly, like the vacuum is drawing power directly from your will to live. You begin. Each stair is coated in mysterious lint, microscopic rocks, and unidentifiable fuzz that somehow returns the moment you vacuum it. It's a Sisyphean task. You make it halfway up before the vacuum starts wheezing like it's dying of emphysema. You jiggle the cord, thump the side with your fist, whisper threats. Eventually, it sputters back to life grudgingly. Then there's dusting. Dusting is less a task and more a performance. You carry the lemon-scented spray bottle like a sacred relic, misting everything in your path and wiping with a rag that has clearly been repurposed from an old gym shirt. The scent is overwhelming. It's supposed to smell like citrus, but it actually smells like lies and the distant memory of pledge. Your mother passes through as you work, arms crossed, eyebrow arched. She doesn't say anything. She doesn't need to. Her silence says, quote, 36, and she's right. Somehow, no matter how hard you try, she always finds dust you missed. She runs a single judging finger across the bookshelf and holds it up like it's evidence in court. Quote 37 as if you personally created it through neglect and moral weakness. The worst chore, though, is the bathroom. You draw the short straw again. You enter the avocado green horror armed with gloves and a sponge that's been living in the undersink abyss since the Carter administration. The cleaning products are labeled things like Tile Slayer and Lime Be Gone. One of them fizzes when it touches air. You spray it anyway. The toilet stares at you. The tub judges you. The mirror is foggy with the reflection of someone who no longer believes in hope. And then just as you're making progress, your sibling casually strolls in, eating a Pop-Tart and announces you missed a spot. You briefly consider violence. Instead, you spray lemon fresh directly in their general direction and go back to scrubbing grout like it's your life's calling. But here's the twist. You're not alone. Chores in the 1980s are a group punishment. No one is ever really done because as soon as you finish one task, another mysteriously appears. The laundry pile regenerates like it's under a dark spell. Dishes multiply in the sink like rabbits. Dust forms behind you as you clean. You live in a domestic ecosystem that seems determined to break your spirit through mild inconvenience. Eventually, the house is clean, or at least clean enough. You smell like pine scent, defeat, and modest triumph. Your parents inspect your work with vague approval. Your reward? Maybe a slice of Jell-O from the fridge. Maybe a pat on the back. Maybe, if you're lucky, a night without hearing the phrase underscore, underscore, quote, underscore, 40, underscore, underscore, congratulations. You've survived weaponized domesticity where chores never end, praise is minimal, and the vacuum is somehow louder than your dreams. And the dust? It'll be back tomorrow, and yes, it'll still be your fault. The home phone is a battleground. The cord is a tripwire. Every call is monitored by parents who believe eavesdropping is just good parenting. There is no privacy. Only the gentle click of someone quietly listening in from the hallway. The phone sits on the kitchen wall like a sacred artifact mounted on a little shelf that holds a stack of paper, a pen that never works, and an address book filled with names written in increasingly frantic handwriting. The receiver is heavy and serious. It feels like something you could use to defend the house if the Cold War suddenly became personal. The cord, spiral and stretched and permanently tangled, dangles like a snake that has survived multiple battles. It's the kind of cord that gets wrapped around your ankle, your wrist, and your dignity all at once. If you've ever tried to untangle Christmas lights while being judged by your entire family, you already understand what it feels like to walk away from this phone mid-call. And the moment it rings, your whole body reacts. The sound is sharp, startling, and full of authority. It's not a gentle ringtone. It's an alarm. It's an announcement. It's the house yelling, "Attention! Someone may be about to feel emotions." Your mother picks it up half the time, and she does it in exactly the same way every time. Sweet voice, perfectly polite, already suspicious. "Hello," she says, as if expecting the person on the other end to confess to a crime. If it's for you, she holds the receiver out like it's a live grenade. "It's your friend," she says. Not their name, not who it is, just your friend. You grab the phone, immediately aware of the audience you now have. Your siblings hover near the doorway, pretending to drink water or inspect a cabinet. Your father is in the living room reading the paper, but you can feel him listening anyway. Everyone in this house has the hearing of a bat when it comes to your personal business. You step away from the kitchen and the cord follows you, stretching across the floor like a trap set by nature. You walk carefully and slowly, dragging the receiver into the hallway, trying to create distance and some illusion of privacy. But privacy in the 1980s is a myth. It's like unicorns or affordable housing. You speak in code. If your friend asks who you like, you say, quote, 45. If you're planning to meet somewhere, you say, that place at the time with the stuff. Everything is vague. Everything is suspicious. Every word feels like it could be used as evidence later in a future parental interrogation. and then comes the click. A soft, subtle sound. The second, phone line. Someone upstairs just picked up the extension. You freeze mid-sentence. This is the 1980s version of being watched. There is no notification, no warning. Just that click and the sudden knowledge that your mother is now listening while pretending she's just checking if the line is free. You continue talking carefully, politely, like you're speaking at a press conference. Your friend laughs on the other end, and you laugh too, but in a slightly higher pitch. The pitch of someone trying to seem innocent while being monitored by a government agency. Then your mom walks past you in the hallway carrying laundry, moving slowly, pretending she isn't listening. Her face is neutral. Too neutral. That's how you know she's hearing everything. You attempt to end the call quickly. You say goodbye 8 times. You do the polite Midwestern farewell, even if you don't live in the Midwest, because hanging up too fast looks suspicious. When you finally place the receiver back on the cradle, you hear your mom's voice drift from the kitchen. Quote, 47. You answer, quote, 48. She nods like she already knows, like she has a file on this friend, like she'll bring this conversation up in 3 months during dinner at the worst possible moment when you're chewing too slowly. Later, you make an outgoing call. It takes effort. First, you check the kitchen to make sure no one is nearby. Then you dial carefully, the rotary wheel clicking dramatically back into place with each number, like you're summoning someone from another dimension. If you dial wrong, you have to start over and you will dial wrong because anxiety makes your fingers stupid. If you're lucky, the person answers. If you're unlucky, their parent answers first. And you have to do the terrifying ritual of speaking to an adult you barely know. Hi, may I please speak to Jamie? There's always a pause, always a suspicious silence. And then the adult says, quote, 50? The question is so intense you forget your own name. Finally, after all of it, the click, the chord, the eavesdropping, the awkward adult interrogation, you return to your room, emotionally exhausted, like you've survived a hostage negotiation instead of a 10-minute conversation about homework and whether anyone saw the new episode of Alf. Congratulations! You have successfully used the family phone, America's greatest invention and also the least private device ever created. In the 1980s, your secrets weren't safe. They were just temporarily on hold. Dad's recliner is off limits, shrouded in mystery and Dorito crumbs. Woe to anyone who tries to sit there. The punishment is swift. The judgment is eternal. The chair sits in the living room like a monument. It's not just furniture. It's a symbol, a landmark, a sacred site protected by unspoken laws older than the shag carpet itself. The recliner is upholstered in brown fabric that once may have been soft, but now has the texture of dried oatmeal. The armrests are permanently darkened by years of skin oils, spilled coffee, and the occasional accidental mustard smear. It smells faintly of aftershave, stale popcorn, and the deep emotional exhaustion of working adults in the Reagan era. You do not sit in it. You don't even lean on it. You walk around it the way you'd walk around a sleeping bear. Not because it's alive, but because it might as well be. This chair has presence, authority. It has absorbed so many evenings of Dad collapsing into it that it now carries his spirit like a throne infused with royal power and television static. Even when Dad isn't home, the chair feels occupied because the recliner represents rules. It represents order. It represents the quiet threat that Dad could appear at any moment, like a suburban Batman emerging from the garage with a briefcase and a sigh. The living room itself seems arranged around the chair. The TV faces it. The lamp is positioned to give it perfect lighting. The side table holds Dad's objects of importance: a coffee mug the size of a soup bowl, a half-finished crossword puzzle, and a remote control worn smooth from constant use. There is also a mysterious small bowl filled with loose change, screws, and at least one tiny plastic piece that belongs to something in the house, but no one knows what. Dad calls it important. You call it the artifact pile. Somewhere in the seat cushions, you know there are Dorito crumbs, ancient ones, crumbs from the early days of cable television, crumbs from football games, crumbs from arguments that ended with Dad muttering, quote, 51, the crumbs are part of the chair now. They're its foundation, its inheritance. If archaeologists excavated this recliner 1,000 years from now, they would find a complete fossil record of the family's snack choices. Sometimes you stare at it and wonder what it would feel like to sit there, to sink into it, to recline, to experience the power. But you know better, because the one time you even think about sitting there, something happens. The atmosphere shifts. The room gets quieter. The dog looks up. Your siblings freeze mid-breath. Even the TV seems to dim slightly, as if preparing for judgment. Your mom might walk past and casually say, quote, 52, not in a threatening way, not even harshly, just in that tone that says, quote, 53. And if you ignore her, if you sit, the punishment is swift. Dad will enter the room, see you in the chair, and stop moving entirely. He won't shout. No, that would be too easy. He will stand there silent like a disappointed statue. Then he will say your name slowly, not angrily, worse, with disbelief, as if he's discovered you stealing company secrets. And you will scramble out of the chair, apologizing immediately, even if you're only sitting for 6 seconds. Because the chair isn't about comfort. It's about respect. It's about territory. It's about Dad having one single place in the house that belongs only to him in a world where everyone keeps touching his tools and asking him to fix the VCR. Dad needs this chair. This is where he watches the news, where he dozes off mid-wheel of fortune, where he holds the remote like a scepter, where he silently processes the day's emotional burdens by leaning back and letting the chair swallow him whole. If you're lucky, he will fall asleep there, mouth slightly open, one sock half off, and you'll watch him for a moment. This powerful household ruler reduced to a snoring man in a recliner, dreaming of peace and zero responsibilities. And in that moment, you realize the chair is not just his throne. It's his escape pod, his bunker, his tiny little kingdom where no one can ask him to do anything unless the TV loses reception. Then suddenly, he's awake, and you are immediately blamed because of course you are. The backyard is where children are sent to get some fresh air and contemplate the futility of suburban life. The grass is always in need of mowing, and the only wildlife is an angry squirrel and a faded slip-in slide. You step outside through the squeaky screen door and immediately get hit with the smell of freshly cut grass, damp dirt, and hot plastic. The sunlight is sharp and slightly judgmental, like it knows you haven't done your homework yet. Somewhere nearby, a neighbor is mowing their lawn, the engine roaring like a tiny airplane, determined to remind you that peace is not allowed in suburbia. The backyard is not so much a place as it is a responsibility. It looks simple at first glance, grass, fence, maybe a tree, but it's actually a whole ecosystem of chores and mild danger. There are patches of grass that have given up and turned into dusty dirt. There's a suspicious hole near the fence that your father insists is from a rabbit, but you're pretty sure it's a portal to another dimension. There's a rusty swing set that creaks in the wind like it's haunted by the ghosts of children who got tetanus in 1979. You're out here because your mother used the classic line, quote, 54. This is the 1980s parenting method known as fresh air therapy, where emotional issues are treated by forcing you into sunlight until you either calm down or get bored enough to stop complaining. You take a few steps onto the lawn and feel the grass scratch your ankles. It's not soft. It's never soft. Suburban grass is sharp, uneven, and secretly full of tiny bugs that want to crawl into your socks and start a new life there. The main feature of the backyard is the lawnmower, your dad's pride and joy. It sits in the garage like a sleeping beast, smelling of gasoline and pure authority. When Dad pulls it out, everything changes. The sound alone sends a message to the entire neighborhood. A man is doing something outside. Children stop playing. Dogs stop barking. Someone 2 houses down immediately decides to mow their lawn too. Because suburban dads operate on a strange psychic schedule. If you're unlucky, Dad calls you out to help. You hold the bag attachment while he empties grass clippings like it's a sacred ritual, or worse, you're handed the push mower. It's heavy, it's loud, it doesn't move easily. It's like trying to vacuum the earth. You push it across the yard sweating while your dad watches from the porch with that quiet expression that says, quote, 55. And maybe it does. Or maybe it builds resentment. While you're out here, you spot the wildlife. There's always one angry squirrel. It lives in the tree like it pays rent and hates you personally. It watches you with narrowed eyes, tail twitching like it's planning a small coup. Sometimes it throws something. An acorn, a twig, maybe a warning. You don't know. You just know it wants you to leave. The only other creature around is your family dog, who sprints across the yard in sudden bursts of chaos, chasing imaginary enemies and occasionally digging holes that your father will later discover and blame on you. The dog believes the backyard is an open-world adventure game. You believe it's a dust bowl with emotional baggage. Then there's the slip-and slide. It lies in the corner of the yard like a relic of summer optimism, a long, faded strip of blue plastic with grass stains and old tape patches. If it's a hot day, your parents might actually let you set it up, which is the closest thing to joy you'll experience all week. You drag it out, unroll it, and connect the hose. The water trickles out weakly at first and then suddenly blasts with the full force of suburban plumbing. You run, you slide, you laugh until you hit the end and skid onto the dirt patch that was once grass. You come up with a scraped knee and a mouthful of lawn, but you pretend it's fine because the alternative is being told to walk it off. The backyard is also where you lose things. Toys disappear into the grass. Socks vanish. Baseballs roll over the fence into the neighbor's yard, never to be retrieved because the neighbor is weird. Every summer item you love eventually becomes sun-bleached, cracked, and abandoned in the corner like a symbol of time passing. As the afternoon goes on, the heat settles. The neighborhood hums. You lie in the grass for a moment, listening to the distant sound of sprinklers and lawn mowers, staring up at a sky so blue it almost feels fake. And you realize the backyard is where childhood happens. Not in grand moments, but in these quiet stretches of boredom and sunlight, surrounded by fences and grass that's always too long. Then your mom calls you inside and you go, because the backyard may be a land of lost dreams, but it's also where you learn to survive being bored without a phone, which is honestly one of the hardest skills humanity has ever invented. Holidays mean forced merriment and the annual unboxing of decorations that smell like mothballs and regret. Family gatherings are a minefield of old grudges and dry stuffing. It begins with the boxes. They emerge from the garage or the attic like ancient relics dragged down with dramatic effort and a cloud of dust that immediately triggers at least one family member's seasonal allergies. The cardboard is soft at the corners, stained, and labeled in your mom's handwriting. Quote 56 or quote 57 or the mysterious quote 58 that contains decorations for no specific celebration, but somehow includes a plastic turkey, a broken wreath, and a single strand of Easter eggs. When the box is open, the smell hits you. It's a perfume of aged pine needles, fading glitter, and that faint attic musk that makes you wonder if your lungs are meant to breathe this. The decorations inside are tangled together like they've been wrestling for 11 months straight. Tinsel clings to everything, your hands, your sweater, your hair, like static electricity with a personal vendetta. You pull out a strand of lights and discover half the bulbs are missing. The other half are suspiciously warm, and none of them will work until your father spends 45 minutes muttering at them like he's defusing a bomb. Holidays in the 1980s are not just events. They're logistical operations. Your mother begins planning like she's preparing for a military invasion. She writes lists. She makes calls. She rearranges furniture. She informs everyone that this year we're doing it right, which means you're about to spend 3 hours dusting things nobody normally touches. Meanwhile, your father becomes temporarily obsessed with outdoor lights. He stands on a ladder, stapling wires into the house with grim determination as if the entire neighborhood is watching and the fate of the family depends on having the brightest display on the block. He doesn't trust the ladder. He doesn't trust the staple gun. He trusts nobody. Yet he continues because holiday pride is stronger than fear. Inside, the house becomes a battlefield of forced cheer. Holiday music plays on repeat, and by the third time you hear quote 60, you begin to question your own sanity. The kitchen fills with the smell of butter, onions, and something baking that will either become a masterpiece or a tragedy. Your mother cooks with the intensity of a woman trying to prove something to the universe. Every dish must be perfect. Every dish must be plentiful. Every dish must be served at exactly the right moment, or the entire holiday collapses into shame. Then come the relatives. They arrive in waves, bringing casserole dishes wrapped in towels, bags of store-brand rolls, and the emotional energy of a storm front. Coats pile up on the bed. Shoes scatter across the floor. Someone immediately turns the thermostat up without asking, and your father's eye begins to twitch. The house fills with noise, laughter, clinking glasses, distant arguments about football, and the constant sound of your aunt explaining how she doesn't use microwaves because of radiation. Someone pinches your cheek. Someone calls you by the wrong name. A cousin you don't really know challenges you to a fight in the basement. You accept because that's what cousins do. Dinner is the main event. The turkey arrives dry as dust and carved with the solemnity of a sacred ritual. The stuffing is either too wet or too crunchy with no middle ground. The mashed potatoes form a mound that could be used as emergency shelter. There is gravy, thin, brown, and poured generously like it's the solution to all conflict. Someone compliments your mother's cooking, and you can see her soften for a brief moment as if all the stress was worth it. Then the conversation shifts. Politics, money, old family stories that start funny and end with someone storming into the hallway. The holiday table becomes a minefield. Everyone is smiling, but you can feel the tension under the surface like the tablecloth is hiding a live wire. Someone mentions an inheritance. Someone brings up that one time Uncle Gary got drunk in 1978. Your mom's smile becomes tighter. Your dad begins staring intensely at the cranberry sauce as if it owes him money. And yet somehow, it works. Between the awkward jokes and the forced hugs, there are moments of real warmth. A shared laugh, a kid falling asleep under a blanket, your grandfather quietly nodding off in the recliner, the dog stealing a piece of turkey when no one's looking. These small moments slip in soft and unexpected like tiny holiday miracles. Eventually, the night winds down. Relatives leave. Dishes pile up. Your house is filled with the scent of leftovers and exhaustion. Your mom sinks into a chair like she's run a marathon. Your dad loosens his belt, sighing deeply. You retreat to your room full of food and complicated feelings. Congratulations! You've survived another 1980s holiday. Equal parts turkey, tinsel, and tension, a celebration of family, and also a reminder that joy in this era always comes with a side of dry stuffing and emotional landmines. And for some reason, everyone still does it again next year. You're forced to shop for new clothes under the flickering lights of a mall food court. Every outfit is picked by someone with a vendetta against comfort or dignity. You return home with a neon windbreaker and a new appreciation for nudity. The mall announces itself before you even enter. You smell it first. Fried food, cinnamon pretzels, cheap perfume, and the faint plastic scent of brand new sneakers. The parking lot is a chaotic landscape of station wagons and sedans, each one shimmering with heat and parental frustration. Your father drives slowly, scanning for a space like he's hunting prey. Your mother grips her purse like a weapon. You and your sibling slump in the back seat, already tired, already preparing for emotional damage. Inside, the mall is a cathedral of consumerism. The air conditioning hits you like a cold slap, and you're immediately blinded by fluorescent lights that make everyone look slightly sick. The floor is polished to a shine that feels suspicious, like it's hiding something. Soft, echoing music plays from nowhere and everywhere. The kind of music designed to calm you into buying things you don't need. You walk past storefronts like you're passing through different kingdoms. There's the shoe store that smells like rubber and desperation. There's the jewelry kiosk where someone tries to sell your mother a gold chain and your father looks like he wants to leave his body. There's the arcade glowing faintly in the distance like a siren call, promising freedom, noise, and the sweet release of spending quarters on meaningless victory. But you're not here for fun. You're here for clothes. Your mother has a mission. We're getting you something nice. This is never a good sign. She drags you into a department store that feels like a maze built by someone who hates children. Racks stretch endlessly, sorted by size and color and emotional suffering. You brush past sweaters that itch just by looking at them. You pass mannequins dressed like adults, pretending to be teenagers, pretending to be adults. Everything is louder than it should be. Patterns, colors, fabrics, all screaming for attention in a way that feels aggressive. Then your mother begins selecting outfits. And by selecting, we mean choosing garments designed to erase everything you believe about yourself. She holds up a turtleneck in a shade of beige, so dull it could calm an angry bear. She holds up pleated pants that suggest you have already accepted a life of accounting. She holds up a sweater with a bold geometric pattern that makes you look like you're about to host a public access TV show about gardening. You try to protest gently, but the 1980s does not allow children to have opinions about their own appearance. You're told you need to look presentable. You're told you can't wear those same jeans forever. You're told this one sentence that destroys everything. Quote, 62? You know you won't. The fitting room becomes your prison. The curtain closes behind you, trapping you in a small space with mirrors on 3 sides. Every angle reveals a different version of you, each one more humiliating than the last. The fluorescent lighting is unforgiving. Your skin looks gray. Your hair looks like it's fighting for its life. You put on the outfit, step out, and your mother reacts with the enthusiasm of someone trying to convince herself she made a good choice. Quote 6-3. No, it doesn't. It looks like you've been hired to manage a yogurt shop. But then somehow the outfit ends up in the yes pile anyway because you are tired, because your mother is determined, because the longer you resist, the longer you stay trapped in the department store's emotional labyrinth. You finally escape, staggering back into the mall with a shopping bag full of regret. Your mother insists you stop at the food court as a treat. The food court is crowded and loud, full of teenagers smoking cigarettes near a planter and parents holding trays with a hollow expression of defeated warriors. The lights flicker softly overhead as if the mall itself is also exhausted. You eat a soft pretzel, salty and warm, and for a brief moment, life feels okay. Then your mother hands you your new purchase, the neon windbreaker. It's bright, aggressively bright, a color that could be spotted from space. It makes a loud underscore quote, underscore 64 underscore noise when you move, like you're constantly announcing your presence to the world. You put it on and immediately feel like a walking traffic cone. Your mother smiles proudly. Your father nods, pretending this is normal. You stare into the reflective glass of a store window and barely recognize yourself. Congratulations. You have survived the mall. You've endured the fluorescent lighting, the fitting room mirrors, and the fashion choices of someone who thinks comfort is weakness. And now you return home with a neon windbreaker and a deep spiritual appreciation for the concept of never wearing clothes again. Your mother's idea of self-care is locking herself in the bathroom with a can of Tab and a well-worn copy of Cosmopolitan. She emerges an hour later, slightly less frazzled, but the existential dread remains. You notice it starts in the afternoon, usually right after something small goes wrong. Maybe the washing machine makes new noise. Maybe the grocery store was out of the good cereal. Maybe your sibling spilled orange juice on the phone book again. The problems are never catastrophic, but they stack up like dishes in the sink, quietly and relentlessly, until your mother's face takes on that look. The look that says, quote, 65. She doesn't announce her retreat. She just moves. 1 minute, she's folding laundry with the speed of a factory worker. The next, she's walking down the hallway with quiet determination, a tab in hand, a magazine tucked under her arm like a life raft. The bathroom door clicks shut behind her with a finality that makes the entire house go still. It's the kind of silence that feels sacred. Even the dog pauses. Even your siblings lower their voices because everyone in the house knows what this means. Mom has entered her sanctuary. In the 1980s, self-care isn't candles or yoga or setting boundaries. It's disappearing into a small room with floral wallpaper and hoping nobody dares to knock. The bathroom is the only place she can claim as hers. Not the kitchen. Too many people need things. Not the living room. Dad's chair has more authority than the Constitution. Not her bedroom. Someone will inevitably wander in asking where socks are. So she retreats to the bathroom, the one place where she can sit down without being handed something sticky. Inside, you imagine the ritual begins. She sits on the closed toilet lid, the fuzzy one, of course, carefully places the magazine on her lap, and cracks open the tab with a soft hiss that sounds almost like relief. Tab is not a drink. It's a statement. It's carbonated determination. It tastes like sweetened metal and quiet sacrifice, but it's hers, and no one else touches it. She flips through Cosmopolitan, a magazine full of impossible hair, impossible bodies, and advice like, quote, 66, as if men are exotic houseplants that require daily misting. She reads articles about spicing up your marriage while the rest of the house slowly falls apart outside the door. She looks at perfume ads featuring women lounging on yachts. And for one brief moment, she remembers that somewhere out there, life is supposed to feel glamorous. Then a child yells something from the living room, and Mom does not answer because this hour is her therapy, her escape, her only chance to hear her own thoughts, even if those thoughts are mostly about unpaid bills, whether the casserole was too salty, and how she's pretty sure nobody appreciates her. You walk past the bathroom door quietly, sensing the danger. Knocking is forbidden unless you're actively bleeding or the house is on fire. And even then, she will probably ask through the door, quote 67, in a voice that makes you reconsider your definition of serious. Outside, the family adjusts. You and your siblings become temporarily self-sufficient like stranded campers. You make your own snacks. You stop fighting. You avoid eye contact. Even Dad becomes quieter, turning the TV down slightly, as if he can sense that a woman in the bathroom is trying to experience peace. And in that quiet moment, you realize something. Your mother's self-care isn't indulgence. It's survival. She doesn't have time to recharge. She doesn't have time for long walks or spa days or even a nap. She has a can of Tab, a magazine, and a bathroom door that locks. An hour later, she emerges. Her expression is calmer, not happy, just calmer, like someone who managed to step out of a storm for a moment. She smooths her hair, she adjusts her shirt, she tosses the empty Tab can in the trash like she's throwing away evidence. She looks at all of you standing there awkwardly and says something like, quote, 68. And she goes right back into the kitchen, back into the chores, back into the emotional labor of managing a family that runs entirely on her invisible effort. The existential dread is still there, of course, but now it's slightly quieter. And in the 1980s, that counts as peace? Congratulations! You've witnessed the rarest phenomenon of suburban life. Mom taking a break? It didn't fix everything, but it kept her from screaming into the fridge. And honestly, that's a win. And so here we are at the end of another long, absurd day inside the 1980s American family, still standing, a little static, clingy, and probably still humming the theme song to underscore quote underscore 69 underscore without knowing why. You've survived polyester pajamas, microwaved mystery meat, and more emotional bottling than a corporate seminar. Somehow you've made it through the jungle of Tupperware, the landmines of sibling rivalries, and the existential dread that lurks in every wood-paneled basement. Maybe your family wasn't exactly the picture-perfect sitcom. Most weren't. Maybe your dad's greatest act of affection was letting you use the good remote, and your mom's version of self-care was 5 minutes alone with a can of Tab and a magazine from 1979. But if nothing else, the 1980s taught you how to laugh in the face of neon anxiety, how to find comfort in the static of the TV, and how to cherish those weird little rituals that somehow got you through. So tonight, as you settle under your blanket, hopefully not crocheted from the same stuff as those living room drapes, take a moment to appreciate the small comforts. Hot water, therapy apps, smoke-free back seats, and maybe a little more emotional vocabulary than your parents ever had. Whisper a quiet thank you to every survivor of the casserole era who paved the way for softer towels, less dangerous lawn darts, and families that, if nothing else, learned to hug with both arms instead of just a nod from across the room. Because history isn't just struggle and suffering. It's proof that people can be ridiculous, resourceful, and resilient all at once. And no matter how weird your family might have been, they gave you stories, strange recipes, and maybe even a reason to laugh yourself gently to sleep. Rest easy, knowing that you made it. Tomorrow, the only thing you have to survive is the group text from your siblings. And if you're lucky, a breakfast that doesn't come out of a box labeled surprise. Good night and sleep well.